Wait, you got an alarm bot there?
Yeah.
They're smoking. They're smoking. They're planning.
Just wait for everyone.
I'm waiting heaven.
Wait for everyone does not mean flash immediately when you're.
They're droning me.
This guy's trolling. This guy's trolling.
No.
He shouldn't be. He should...
And
Wait, you guys didn't check that corner? Hello?
What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. In this video, we're going to be breaking down how to dominate unwinnable games. And I know you have had these games before. We have teammates that are not cooperating, or things are just not going right, and Psalms, Dignitas, top pro, actually gets in a multiple overtime round, and the round actually ends up 17-17. Freaking crazy. And we're going to break down all the tips, tricks, mistakes that are made on all sides so that you can learn something from this esteemed pro. But go to the GameLeap website right now and the links down below for in-depth advanced VODs. I know a lot of you have been wanting more advanced content that is hand-tailored to help you climb the ranks of Valorant, and we got it on the GameLeap website, so go check it out right now. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, for those of you who don't know that much about Psalms is a multi-game god. I mean, he started as a Dota pro, became a Fortnite top-tier pro, and is now perfectly transitioned to Valorant and is a top-tier Valorant pro. This guy is a flexible god with brains and aim, and for those of you who come from non-FPS shooters, he's a great person for you to be learning from. Now, kicking it off with this first round in overtime, I love how he exactly pings this spot. He goes on the map, he pings this spot, pre-aims head level, wall banks, and gets a free kill, almost like he drew it up, which is exactly what he did. And that's freaking amazing to do because it gives you relative perspective. It's one thing to know like kind of where to aim, but pinging exactly where the corner meets and the lines meet can just make it to where you're gonna have more consistent wall banks and convert on more kills, just like he did. Now, you already saw at the beginning of the video that they lose this round because someone didn't follow comms, wasted abilities, went in alone, and didn't check corners. I mean, I'm sure each and every one of us had this kind of teammate before, but it's sad to see even in the highest ranks, these type of teammates are still prevalent. Now, Psalms is going to have to mentally refresh here. He's been in-game leading the entire time, and when you have or lose a round like that, and I'm sure you have lost rounds just like that, you just feel completely mentally boomed. You don't even want to try anymore. You think the loss is in the bag. But through his comms, he talks with his team, keeps a positive mental attitude, and focuses on the next round, doesn't get caught up talking about the previous round, because that's not going to help them win this game. Now, that being said, a couple rounds later, even pros are not perfect, and Psalms actually makes a vital mistake here that gets him punished. He challenges this door crack in garage, and it's something that I see a lot of people do in ranked, but importantly, it is incredibly risky to do. On top of this, as a general rule of thumb, if you're on the attacker side, you actually have slight advantage rifle because when you're swinging that opening, you can pre-aim the top level and know relative where enemies will be at. But if you're at the top level, you don't necessarily know how far away they're going to be away from the door. They could be all the way back towards hay, or they could be further up closer to the door, and you don't really know exactly where their head is going to be. As you see, he did get a shot off, he just didn't hit the head because he couldn't possibly pre-aim that angle. He didn't know exactly where that person was going to swing from. Now, that being said, sometimes it can be worth challenging if you do pull it off. It's like one of those mechanical check things, those reaction time check things, but like I said, it's really risky. And do I think it's worth challenging? Not generally, but if you do have an op and the enemy have ARs, or if you have ARs and the enemies have worse weapons, then of course you could definitely challenge that with ease. I actually think the biggest question here is risk versus reward, and just knowing that people are outside on grass or trying to push through, that's enough. You can just jiggle peek that angle, you don't have to challenge, but getting headshotted right off the bat when you're holding garage just completely gives up this really difficult to push area and this pivot point between C and B, and it's just something that you really can't give up. You create a glaring issue or glaring weakness in your defenses when you go for a play like that and it doesn't work out. Now, taking these passive default positions that they're taking is really godly, especially for enemy pushes and utility. Now, this is something that you can actually incorporate in your games where a lot of times enemies will push up mid mid because they think it's like free to push up mid and challenge grass. But if you don't peek anything, you're just hiding in window, you're not challenging anything, you're not doing anything for a little while, sometimes enemies will really mess up, push too far forward, and then you'll swing out and you get a free kill. Now, the thing about this play in particular that Psalms is doing is he's setting up exactly where the enemy Sova is going to use his recon dart, because the Sova learned a rollout and he keeps repeating the same arrow over and over again, and Psalms even knows it's coming, shuts it down instantly, and he does that throughout the rest of OT as well. Now, Psalms is going to make a interesting call that I really like. It's just a go silent call. That's all he says, go silent. And this is a call to all teammates to cut off all forms of information and leave the enemy guessing about location. And the enemy gets incentivized to actually peek because there is no information and they want to try to get that information so they don't get bum rushed out of nowhere. Now, this call, unfortunately, only works if everyone goes silent, but is an amazing call and something that you should either call yourself or just try to follow if allies call it, because you can see how well it works here, where they cut off all information. The enemy needs information, so they peek, and they peek right into them. They get some free kills, and they get 2 picks. Now, that being said, how does Psalms and his team manage to almost throw after getting 2 picks and spike down? Well, this is the thing that consistently happens about post plant. Everyone keeps getting it wrong because they don't understand what the priority. There is 2 big important things to understand about a post plant positioning in general. The first and most important thing, period, end of story, that is the most important individual thing at a primary level that you should be thinking about when being in a post plant position. If you are like 1v3, for instance, you should all be standing within active LOS of each other and make it so the enemy has to literally push out of hidden positioning. They have to literally swing out in order to challenge one of you, but if they do that, they will be in the LOS of someone else. You want to basically force an enemy, if they ever wanted to win that, to actually have to hit like multiple 180 flick crazy shots, just things that are completely unreasonable for anyone to make. And that's why when you have that numbers advantage, you shouldn't really be having any possibility to lose. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's very important is spike pressure. And a lot of times you create refragability positions and you try to guarantee those kills, and the less people that are alive on the enemy team, the better spike pressure works. So if you can have a refragable position plus create spike pressure, that is the best possible thing. Not always possible though, but something to keep in mind. Now right here, his teammates make the mistake of challenging enemies without allowing that refragability and let the enemy cypher get multiple kills. This is like the most vital 101 error possible, and you gotta remember, these are top tier players. These are immortal radiant level players, and they're still making these mistakes, and I'm sure that they happen in your games as well. Now that being said, do you have to just go play a passive position altogether and just put spike pressure? No, absolutely not. But if you want to challenge enemies, you need to be doing it together so that there's trades. When you have numbers advantage, imagine if every 1 kill the enemy gets, you get a kill back, right? That's exactly what you should be trying to do. If you have 5 people and they have 3, they get 1 kill, you kill them back. They get another kill, you kill them back. They get another kill, you kill them back. You are going to win that by a landslide. And that's something that you really need to understand. Use that numbers advantage. Don't put yourself in a scenario where the enemy all of a sudden almost wins, because the enemy really, it was this close and they probably would have won the entire game off of it just because of a general lack of post-plant understanding. Now moving on to this next clip, watch his aiming fundamentals as he challenges the mid door. One side at a time, he checks from each side of the door frame mid, as those are the strongest possible positioning, and those are the most likely for Reyna to be in, because you gotta understand that from a Reyna's perspective, she wants to be standing relatively near natural cover, relatively near an area where she could get out if things get dire, and that is either the left or the right of the door frame, and that really allows Psalms to preempt these angles and be much more ready for an enemy to be there, and he just shuts down the Reyna. Now, that being said, from the defender's point of view, as an additional note, Reynas can subvert this expectation to be playing around natural cover by literally be playing like in the middle or pushed up middle and go all in on a kill, where they're playing in an unlikely spot. Enemies that are swinging don't pre-aim that spot. You get a kill on Reyna and then you fade away. Very risky, but I've seen tons of high level players do it consistently. And if you're confident in your mechanics, that can be a way to convert your mechanics into free picks because enemies are going to swing that, not peeking where you are because it really doesn't make any logical sense for you to be there or a random person to be there. Now, after Psalms pushes the person flanking from garage, his team spreads out in control of all of mid, which is really good. After the spike is down, holding on point is a huge liability. You can't hold back of sight. You could get wall banked, and you have both of the links that you have to contend with. It's just way too many angles that you could get pressured from. So it's really good that they flushed out in this way, and they put the enemy in a terrible scenario and basically just squeezed them out, gave the enemy very little options to make a play, especially because the enemy didn't have enough aggressive pop flashers left to actually push through the smoke and make a play on the enemy. Now, moving on to this little tidbit, a lot of people ask me why high-level Reynas just seem to randomly throw their LEERs through the wall sometimes, and they basically are throwing these LEERs without the intent to swing on them. Well, the thing that you need to understand is you could be using LEER as an information ability. You see, Psalms has a suspicion that an enemy could be hiding in short and doesn't want to cross back without, checking first. Also, just knowing an enemy is there before he rotates is worth value because he knows that an enemy is late rotating, which is really, really important. It's better for making better plans later on. Now, the reason this works in the first place is you need to imagine what it's like to be an enemy. What happens if you're just standing in a pretty good position, but out of nowhere you get blinded? You usually just shoot it right away. You're like, what the heck is happening? You shoot it because you don't know if you're about to get rushed or not. And when you shoot it, boom, you hear the fire. So I'm just like, hey, there's an enemy here. I'm going to rotate off. Or hey, there's an enemy here. I'm going to challenge him. This is just really good for information's sake and something that Psalms does a lot to try to, put the pieces of where enemies are in his mind to make the best rotation strategy or the best playmaking strategy. Now, for this last epic play, Psalms is going to creep up mid and his team is going to pressure C-Long, and Psalms is going to kind of look around, wait for enemies to start rotating to put more pressure on C. He doesn't see that, but he's going to push up to this cypher trap, breaks it, and then instantly challenges back a sight, and he sees an Omen who he just wall banks and finishes off. Now, what he's going to do is he's going to temporarily control back of sight for when his team gets that spike down. And this is absolutely great. Now, I told you, you shouldn't be holding back a sight for a long period of time after the plant is down. But in pre-plant situations, the number one thing that the enemy is trying to do is prevent your team from getting that spike down, because what you need to really understand about mid is it's very, very hard to plant mid, but it's also very, very hard to defuse mid. So if you can do things to ensure that the plant actually gets spiked down, that is amazing. And when he plays that back of sight, he can punish any person that swings from either link to try to prevent that spike down, which is exactly what he does, and he kills the enemy cypher. Now, as he goes back to mid main, he's gonna blind fire through the smoke C-Link as he hasn't seen anyone come from that side, and he actually does kill someone through this smoke. I figured it out, guys. Psalms is hacking. No, all joking aside, their team managed to go 19 and 17, multiple OTs win, and he himself got 39 kills while shot calling. What an absolute god gamer, and I think there was a lot we could learn from this footage. But you could learn even more from the GameLeap website with in-depth advanced gods, VOD reviews, tips, and tricks. I mean, we got it all on the GameLeap website. So do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. Thank you so much for coming by. I love each and every one of you. See you next time.